Alrighty, folks, welcome back to the podcast. We got another great one lined up for you today. So on the podcast today, I'm going to have Lindsay Persico. Hopefully I said your last name right, Lindsay. You guys are probably very familiar with her. She's been around the hunting community for quite a while and was recently on the show Alone. It's actually one of my favorite shows. I've watched every season of it and wish that I could do it. I think there's a lot of the stuff that I could do, and actually the season that Lindsay was in, they got to be with other people. Well, I'll let her tell the story on that, but really cool show, really cool thing to be able to go out and just kind of live on your own and do your own thing for as long as you possibly can. Some of them are 30 days, some of them are 100 days, some of them are just last man standing kind of a thing, and so have loved the show, but Lindsay was recently on that show and was just a rock star on it. So I'll save the story and let her tell the story. But she's been a writer for Ehuntr in the past, has written some amazing articles about building muscle, being fit, bringing the kind of the healthier side into your life as a hunter and an outdoorsman. And so check out those articles. We posted them up and refreshed them recently, so they're up on the website, so you can get to them really easy. Really good writer. Lindsay has done an amazing job with the way that she has written for us, and we're very grateful for her contribution to Ehuntr. And then also, I did an interview recently. You guys have been following along on the podcast. You'll have listened to the podcast that I did with Taylor with 360 Sportsman. And Lindsay is actually going to be part of 360 Sportsman and going to be able to contribute there as well in an amazing way to be able to help individuals be better survivalists, outdoorsmen. Again, I'm going to let her tell the story there and give you the details there, but super excited to have her on the podcast. Been wanting her to jump on for quite some time. And so we're just going to kind of just chat and talk all things hunting and just life in general and what's going on with Lindsay and catch up with her. So super excited to have her on. So let's go ahead and jump into the podcast. All right, guys, welcome back to the podcast. As I mentioned in the introduction that I recorded, just super stoked about this podcast. As I mentioned, I love the show Alone, and so having Lindsay on with me today is I'm a little bit starstruck, honestly, because of that show and everything that she did there. So let's get her on. Lindsay, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing so good. Thank you for taking some time with me today and chatting with me. I've honestly been really looking forward to this podcast ever since you said, yeah, let's go ahead and do it. So, but I think most of our listeners know who you are. You've written for Ehuntr in the past. I mean, you're pretty well known in the hunting and outdoor community. But for those that may not know you, tell us a little bit about you and your background.
Well, I'm from Montana, but I originally grew up in Idaho, and I grew up in a family where my dad hunted, and I was lucky because I had an older brother, but my dad still took me out hunting ever since I was really little, and I always loved it.
Yeah.
So hunting was kind of my passion growing up, and as I grew into an adult, it grew with me, and I grew up hunting whitetails, but then that expanded into elk and anything else I could hunt. Antelope once I moved to Montana, and then predators, and just, I don't know, it just kept expanding, and that led me to a lot of the opportunities that I've had. I got married. I have 4 kiddos, one of which we just adopted in June of this year, which was really exciting.
Congrats.
And I, as a mom of little kids, I was at home and I thought, you know what? I really like to write. I think I'm going to start a blog like back in the day, And that led me to writing for you guys. It's led me to writing for a lot of different publications. I now write for Western Hunter magazine and got connected with Tana Grenda through health and fitness focused on hunting. And now I do women's retreats for her. And that has expanded into doing women's retreats in Canada with another friend. And it's opened up the world for me. I've gotten to have so many cool experiences and go on so many adventures, including ending up on the Alone show.
Yeah. So you, those retreats, I was going to actually ask you about those. So you did one in Alaska this year too. I know you did Canada, but didn't you do one in Alaska this year too?
Yeah, we've done retreats, Tanagrenda with Bristol Bay Retreats. We've done retreats in Alaska for the last 3 years.
Wow.
We take women up, we hop on bush planes, we go out, drop off into the bush, and we teach them survival skills, fly fishing, wilderness first aid, take them on a hike. We teach them about bear safety and how to set up tents, just have a blast with them. And it's all women focused, women led, women participants. That expanded, and we've started doing a big event for more people here in the lower 48 called the Wild Women's Rendezvous.
Yeah.
And that happens in June. We have a whole bunch of participants that came last year. It was our first annual event, and now we're doing our second one this coming June. Nice. And then my friend, who used to be a client of mine, started doing her retreats in Canada. And so I went to Ontario this year for the first year, and we did a canoe trip where we had to pick up the canoes, carry them, make base camps, and it was just so much fun. The retreats are something I look forward to every single year.
It's so funny because like I see like the stories posted on Instagram and whatnot. I mean, they all look like they're having a blast, but tell me how it really is. How do those ladies do? Like, are they that, like, they're tough women? I'm so impressed by the videos I see.
That is what's really cool about these retreats is we have a ton of fun. It's Good. Impossible for all these women to go out in the woods and not just have a blast. You make friends for life because you bond through the hardship, because it is hard. Yeah. But that's another reason why they come, is they want to be challenged. I mean, a lot of times in our everyday lives, we're not challenged in that kind of a way. We're not challenged, physically in the elements, being outside, mentally having to endure discomfort. We're very comfortable people. And so these trips, they take strangers, they throw them together, and they put them in uncomfortable situations. And the bonds that grow out of that are something that you normally would take years to form with somebody, but you form it in a week.
I find it amazing because like I've got my friends like from high school, that I've known my entire life, and we're pretty good friends. Like, well, obviously we're good friends. We've been friends for 20 years, but then there's guys that I've gone hunting with just in the last few years, and I am tighter with those guys than I am with the guys that I've known for 20 years, because you go out into the mountains, you're back in there, 10, 20 miles. It's just you guys. It's hard. It sucks at times, but it's amazing, the whole time. It does. It creates that bond between individuals that there's just no other way to get it. So like I said, I see those videos that you post. I'm like, man, is that real life or is that Instagram?
No, it's real. And it's the harder the struggle, the closer the bond. Yeah. And the cool thing about those trips is it is unscripted, and there is a lot that's out of your control. When you fly into the bush in Alaska, you have a plan to get picked up at a certain time, but there's no guarantee they're going to be able to get you. Right. We got stuck 3 extra days in Alaska, in the bush in Alaska, because the weather was so bad they couldn't land on the lake to pick us up. And that is something that you don't get to experience very often in everyday life, where it is literally out of your control. We had one woman who said, what's it going to cost? I will pay for it. I don't care what it is. And we're like, there is no money can't solve this. Nope. It doesn't get solved by money. You literally are at the whim of Mother Nature. And it's such a good experience to have, because it really brings you down to earth and makes you realize, like, okay, I'm small. Like, it doesn't matter how much money I have. It doesn't matter how much I know. If Mother Nature is telling me no, the answer is no. And it's good for us.
It is. And until you're there, like, it's hard to understand it. I went to Alaska. You can't see it, but over here's my blacktail that I went to Kodiak and got. And the same thing, like the weather started coming in, and, we had our satellite phone or texting thing. And they said, hey, like, we can either come get you today, or you're going to be out there for another, possible week. And it's an interesting feeling to be like, man, this is like, we're at the whim of Mother Nature, whatever Mother Nature says that we can and can't do. Like, and then we've got to adjust to that. So we got to figure out how to survive there for another week, or in that case, get out of there at that time. But yeah, unless you've been there, it's such a hard thing to do. And I think there's a lot of people that they think it's easy, but and you can watch it on TV or on Instagram and it looks easy, but when you really get out there, it's tough, not just physically but mentally.
it will rip you open and bare your soul to the world, because the actual truth of how you handle that situation will come out, and you'll learn things about yourself that you didn't know because you've never been in that situation before. But it's incredibly valuable. I think it's one of the things that keeps these women coming back. And it's interesting because during the hard times, you will see some women that are struggling, but when they out of the trip, as soon as your feet touch back on out of the bush and you're in society again, that is the part they talk about over and over again, and how much they loved it. And that's the way it is with the hardest hunting stories. We never tell the easy ones. We tell the ones that sucked, because they're the ones that mean the most to us.
So true. Yeah, we don't tell the stories of riding around in the truck and a deer walked by on the side of the road and we shot it. You know, that like that. No one tells that story. But you tell the stories where you hiked in like backcountry. It was hard. You had blisters on your feet. Like those are the stories that we tell, which is awesome.
You may not have even gotten anything, but that's the story you tell. Because it was the adventure that you had and the things that you learned and the challenge you overcame, and it just meant a lot.
Yeah, those challenges, and it's where you grow too as an individual. I do kind of feel bad for the people that don't ever get to experience that, because there's so much growth as a human being that come from those being in those positions. And so, I mean, that's why I love being able to talk to you. And we're going to get into the 360 Sportsman kind of at the end of the conversation. But, you know, being able to bring that knowledge to people that haven't experienced that, I think is absolutely huge. And become the person that you become, trying to help other people learn that and grow from that, I think is absolutely huge. So when do you guys do those retreats? What time of year do you do those?
Our Alaska retreats are in July, and it all depends upon the year, how many we offer. Sometimes it can be 3, sometimes it's 2, sometimes it's 1.
Okay.
And those are released usually months in advance, so people can sign up and get prepared for it and get flights and such. The retreats, the bigger retreat that we started, the Wild Women's Rendezvous, that one was created in order to try to make it available to more people, because the price point of the Alaska retreats is high just because avgas is expensive.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot of flights to do what we do. So those trips are somewhat out of reach for a lot of people, and we wanted to create an experience where it was more available. And it worked out incredibly well. We do those in June. The dates are out for this year's. I don't remember them exactly, but if you look at Wild Women's Rendezvous, you'll find it. And then the retreat in Ontario is really cool as well, and that one happens in August.
Okay, awesome. And the reason I asked that, I mean, to see if we get more people signed up for it. Oddly enough, and it's an interesting fact for my podcast, 35% of my listeners are female, which you think a hunting podcast, it would be very much more heavily male. But I feel like there's more and more women getting into hunting and outdoors. And I don't know what's causing it, other than people like you that are just out there showing what women can do. And I had an athlete with First Form on a couple of days ago, and we were talking about this. And she says, you know, we're just showing, women are showing what they can do and the abilities that they have. And by doing that is making more women think, man, I want to try that. And so, you know, kudos to you all getting more and more into the hunting industry, or the outdoor industry, I should say. But yeah, our listeners are, like I said, 35% of our listeners are female. So if they want to go and sign up for those rendezvous, they can just go to that website and be able to sign up.
Yeah, if you go to Bristol Bay Retreats, she has the Alaska retreats listed there, and our Wild Women's Rendezvous is listed there. The Wild Women's Rendezvous is very hunting focused. It's basically the opportunity to learn everything that you could possibly need to know about hunting. We have a long range shooting school that Gunworks comes out and teaches. Nice. There's actual elk hunts we take the women on so that they can get in the field and either shoot or be with someone who's taken an elk, teach them how to process it in the field, how to pack it out. We teach hide care, tanning, skinning, butchering, wild game cooking. There's shotgun courses. There's wilderness survival and wilderness first aid and foraging. We basically take everything you need to know about hunting to get you started and offer those workshops. And the goal is to have all women instructors. we had only one class where we needed to bring in a male. That was for the Gunworks class. They brought in a team, and a male and female came and instructed it. But it's all women participants and almost 100% female instructors that are professionals in their field that come and teach these courses. And it's an amazing opportunity for women to get a step up in that if they're interested in hunting and get some hands-on experience.
Well, being able to see women doing what they want to do, like you said, getting women that are experts in that field, then not only are they getting what's being taught to them in those classes, but then they're also seeing that person as a female that's successful in what she's doing. That right there alone goes a long ways. To be able to see somebody do something kind of gives us that hope that we can do it ourselves. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you see a regular person just like you doing something, and you're like, I can do that too. Well, and the cool thing about having all females there is it takes a little bit of the pressure and intimidation away that some women tend to feel in that space, because it is so male dominated. But the thing I found with females in the hunting world is they are eager to learn. Yeah. They want to learn. Yeah. They want to get hands-on. I hear so many women that say, I got a deer, but I was with my husband or I was with my dad and he was in a hurry and he didn't let me skin it. He didn't let me quarter it out, those types of things. So I want to do that. And so they want to get their hands dirty and they want to learn. Yeah. And that is exciting to me.
I say it all the time when I'm talking to like my buddies and whatnot, but I'd rather talk to a female hunter on my podcast than I would a male. It seems like the males, they're just like, it's just what they do. And you don't get that sense of excitement like you do when you're talking to a female. And so I love being able to talk to a lot of our female hunters and female outdoors women that come on and they talk about just how excited they are about doing different things. And you can sense that excitement in their voice and your voices as well. And so it's a lot of fun being able to talk to you all. And you were saying regular women like you teaching them. I don't know, Lindsay, that you're a regular woman. You're pretty unique in what you do.
I look at it like that though, because I am.
Yeah.
I am a regular person, and I have always had that approach throughout my life, which I think has led me to be able to have done all the things that I've done. Is I look at something out there that I'm curious about, and I look at the person, and if it's not somebody like Elon Musk, okay, I'm not going to look at him and be like, oh yeah, he's a regular guy, I can do that.
No,
I can't do that. He's not a regular person. But you can look at people doing things and be like, that is a regular person, and if they can do it, I can do it. And that's the attitude I think women need to take in this area, and even in all areas of life. Everybody that's out there doing this stuff, for the majority of them, they are regular people.
Yeah.
And if it's something you're really interested in, you can do it too. Yep. And there's really no barrier there.
I honestly thought that when I've been a fan of Alone since the beginning of the show. It's a show that I've loved. I love watching, and I'm always like, man, I don't know that I can do what they do. I'm pretty good outdoors, and I'm a pretty good survivalist and whatnot, but some of the stuff that they put on that show, I'm like, I just don't know that I could do it. And then I saw you come on, and I didn't know that you were going to be on that show until I watched that show. And I'm like, well, when I saw you, I'm like, wait a second, I know, like, I don't know you, but I know who you are. I'm like, that's a person that's written for Ehuntr and just a person that I could know. I'm like, that's amazing. And then to watch you throughout that show, I'm like, this is, taking a regular person and being able to do that is absolutely amazing. And so I loved it. Like I said, I know it's been a long time since you did that show, but I'd love to kind of hear some stories from it, because boy, you kind of got left there on your own pretty quickly, according to the looking at the show. So, tell me a little bit about that experience, as far as like leading up to it and being out there. And I mean, if you don't mind, I know you've probably shared it 1,000 times, but I'd love to know more about that experience.
Well, it's a perfect example of just a regular person. If you really want to do something, you can, because I'm not a survivalist, and I teach survival skills because I have experience with that, and I'm comfortable and confident in that ability. But those were skills that I learned primarily because of hunting.
Right.
And it's because you go hunting and there is the possibility that something could go wrong and your plans get changed and you're stuck out there. So you have to have some of those basic skills to be able to survive if something goes wrong. So that was my experience coming into it. I wasn't a trained survivalist. I was just a regular hunter that loved the outdoors. And the producers of Alone reached out to me and asked me if I would do the regular Alone show, but I had little kids at home and it was the 100-day one, and I was like, I can't be gone that long.
Right.
There's no way. And so they said, well, we have a show that we want to try, and it's only a 30-day show. So would you be willing to do that? And I honestly have never wanted to be on TV. I had no desire to be on a reality television show. That is not in my nature. But I had a mentor growing up, and he told me one time, you've got to do the things in life that you would regret not doing. And I looked at that scenario and I'm like, I have not traveled much. This is an opportunity that it may come along only once in my life. May I look back on this someday if I don't do it and regret not having tried it? And I thought there was a possibility that was true. So I decided to go for it. And I went into it, I think, a lot differently than a lot of people, because so many people apply for the Alone show every single year. They want to go do it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not my approach. Like, I was not excited about going up there because I knew I'd been out enough. I knew it was going to suck. I was like, it's not going to be fun. It's going to be hard. I'm going to be cold. I'm going to be hungry.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be tired. Like, it's going to be miserable. So I didn't go into that with rose-colored glasses. I went into it with a very realistic approach. And I think that made a difference for me in not having that initial kind of shell shock of the situation once you get put out there. I knew what I was going into, and I was very mentally prepared for that scenario. And that has carried over into a lot of my survival instruction, is the huge mental side of survival.
Mm-hmm.
It is, skills are important, but you can have all the skills in the world, and if your mind is not up to the task, you're going to fail. Exactly. You're going to fail because your mind is more important than your level of skills. You go in with a few skills and a really strong mindset, and you're going to do really well. And that was kind of shown, I feel like, in the episode, because the first guy left on day 2 and the second guy left on day 8.
Yeah.
And I felt like actually quite blessed to get the experience. I got both experiences. Mm-hmm. I got to experience it with a team, and I got to experience it alone. And I've always been somebody that liked being alone. When I was a little girl, my mom remembers, I was about 3 years old, and she's like, I remember one time watching you play and being like, this girl just prefers to just go and play alone, and she's perfectly happy for hours just by herself. She can just entertain herself. And it worked really well for that show because I absolutely loved the time I was out there by myself. I thought it was odd when I came back and people watched the show. They had an emotional response to me being left out there.
Yeah.
There were people who were angry.
Yeah.
They're like, I can't believe they left you. And I'm like, oh, thank goodness they left me. I was like, this is great. I get to do this by myself. And it is one of the reasons why I love solo hunting so much, is because to me, when I'm out there by myself, it is the most exciting thing because it is a pick your own adventure story.
Yeah.
I get to make all the decisions. I get to look at what I have in front of me and decide how I want to tackle it. And to me, that is fun. I really enjoy that. So I felt blessed that I got left alone and was able to finish the whole 30 days and come out having achieved something that I was really proud of.
Mm-hmm. Man, you talked about that emotional response that people had, like when those guys left you. And I honestly, I felt the same way. I was like, man, these guys are abandoning her. And again, I knew who you were. And I was like, for you, it's not going to be that big of a deal. I think there's a lot of people that be like, are you kidding me? These guys are going to leave me by myself for the majority of this show. I mean, I get it. The one guy got sick, but the other one, I think he was just homesick more than anything and just wanted to go home. And I get it. It's a mental struggle, but yeah, when they left, I was like, that's terrible to leave her out there all by herself. And you did, you thrived. And I guess when I was watching it with my family at the time when it first came out, and they were kind of asking questions about it. And I said, the great thing about it is that moose is all hers now. She doesn't have to share any of that meat with anybody. So she's not going to go hungry for the next 20 days.
Yeah, I think that the producers of the show would have loved it if I had been upset about being left alone.
Oh, really?
I think they would have been like, yes, this is good TV. And I think I was somewhat of a disappointment to them because I was so just whatever.
Yeah.
It's fine. I'm happy. I'm good. And, to me, that is like that. If you're in a real survival situation, the way that I managed that was the way that you want to manage a real survival situation.
Yeah.
I wasn't focused on anything that wasn't essential for survival. I focused on water, I focused on food and fire, and making sure that I could take care of those necessities. And that was all I did. I wasn't out building extravagant things and like that's just not who I am. I
Right.
wasn't gonna make a bone fish hook and go try to catch a fish, and that's not who I am. I was like, I'm here to survive for 30 days, and that's all I'm here for, and I'm gonna survive for 30 days. And I did, but it's not exciting television, for somebody to take it in a very mundane approach like that. But it works. That's effective.
And they might have been disappointed in it, but honestly, I think it was a good thing to see you. They may have been disappointed in your reaction to it, but I think it made for better television to see, again, a female that is able to withstand not only being alone and being out in that environment, but then the emotional side of it, to see them leave and go home and you're there by yourself and you handled it like a champ. You were just like, no big deal. Here we go. I'm going to move my camp up here. Like you just kept on going. So they may have been disappointed on that side of it, but I feel like you send a message that you're strong, you're tough, you're going to push through it. You're going to survive through it. I wanted to ask you real quick. So some of the stuff the show didn't show that I was so curious about from a survivalist standpoint, and you mentioned one of them was the water. They didn't really show much of how you guys got water and what you did with the water. Did you just drink from the lake, or what did you do out there to survive with water?
We're really blessed being in that situation where it was primitive skills that you can drink straight out of that lake.
Oh, okay.
So we didn't have to boil water or anything like that. And it would have been incredibly difficult if we had, because we did the hot rock boil in the stomach of the moose. But that I used that for a little while, but that only lasts so long, and that lining got worn down and wouldn't have lasted 30 days.
Right.
Condition that it was in. So if you had had to boil water without anything to boil it in, it would have been really difficult. Yeah. And
that's what I was thinking the whole, like, not the whole time, but as I was watching it, I'm like, wonder how they're doing the water situation. Cause you don't have a pot or a cup or anything to boil it in. And I was thinking about that, like the stomach, that would work for a little while, but it's not going to last very long. And I thought it would break down. So super, super curious about that. And then I also want to ask you about the moose. So you guys smoked a lot of the meat from the moose. Is that what you ate the entire 30 days? Was that smoked meat?
Yeah. So about the first half of the show, I was in that first camp, and I had that smoker set up, and I was able to smoke quite a bit of the moose meat, but it was a slow process because it was so cold.
Yeah.
And everything was so wet. So keeping that fire in my smoker going was difficult. So it was slow. But I had, by the time I had to move my camp, I had quite a little stock of dried meat. And so the way that show works is you're on native land and the natives provide the meat. So they get the moose and they give it to the show.
Gotcha.
And so when I ended up having to move my camp, there was no way I was going to bring all of that leftover moose meat with me. So what they did is took that moose meat and gave it to the tribe so that it wasn't wasted. And I took all of my dried meat. So I had portioned it out to where I had about 3 sticks of dried meat 3 times a day for the rest of the time I was supposed to be there. And it lasted me all the way until probably the last 2 days. I didn't quite have enough meat for that, but I would forage every day for rose hips. And when it was starting to get dark and I was like, gotta be back at my camp, I would sit down by the fire and I would take off my boots and I would take off anything that was kind of wet and I would prop it up and start drying things. And then I would sit there and I would pull the little ends off the rose hips and I would eat those. And it gave me just that tiny little bit of carbohydrates. Just in the end of the day, I would look so forward to it and it tasted so good while I was there. But I lost 25 pounds in 30 days.
Wow.
Which was a lot for me because I didn't have a lot to lose.
I was gonna say you went out there pretty. I mean, you always stay very fit and thin, and so I can't remember. It's been a bit since I watched the show, but I remember them saying that you had lost a certain percentage of your body weight. I didn't realize it was that much weight though. So yeah, that's a lot. Those roast hips, that was probably like having ice cream every night though. You know, I'll bet that was delicious.
Well, they were kind of frozen. They'd be frosty, you know, and you'd only get a tiny little bit off the end of it, but it tasted so sweet and so good at the end of the day. And it was just like my little way of like tucking myself in for the night.
Yeah. Well, that's, you know, what's funny is like you said in the beginning, we live a very comfortable life, you know, and we're used to a very comfortable life. But if you've ever done like a diet or anything like that, you start like, it's the little things, the little bits of enjoyment that you're like, I'm going to take advantage of this. I had a girl that I knew that worked for me in my real job. I'm a nurse. I run a hospice and home health company, and what she would do is, you know, she dieted all day long, but then she would give herself 3 M&Ms at the end of the day. You know, 3 M&Ms aren't going to kill anybody. That's not going to make you gain 20 pounds. But it was just that something that, you know, little something that she looked forward to. And most other Americans, 3 M&Ms is just not going to be enough. You know, they're going to need more than that. And so when you're out there surviving, kind of the same thing. And I've had that same thing when I've been out looking forward to something just little, like not that drastic. I've never been as drastic as you were on Alone, but you know, something little that I'm like, oh man, just a little treat. And it brings your spirits up and helps you just kind of get through the day. And I'm guessing that's what those did for you.
Yeah, it was kind of a nice way to look forward to capping off my day. I would be sitting by my fire and it'd be warm. So I'd be comfortable temperature. I'd have a treat that I didn't really have for the rest of the day.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, that would kind of just give me that little mental boost before I go into like 11 hours of darkness.
Yeah.
And you know, there's no light there. You have your fire, but that's all you've got. So
See, that's
good to
in fact, one of my kids said that. They're like, that would be a killer, sitting there all night. Because I didn't realize it was 11 hours of darkness at night. And that's what they're like, what does she do all night long? That's a great question. I don't know how she keeps herself busy.
Well, you try to stay warm and you try to keep your fire going. And I would spend a fair amount of time just putting my head out from under my shelter and watching the Northern Lights, which was not too bad of a show.
Oh, that's a good show. Wow, that is so cool. Yeah, I felt like that part would make me go a little bit crazy sitting there alone for that many hours. How many hours do you think you slept a night?
I would wake up quite often throughout the night to stoke the fire. And it's like you would get cold and you'd wake up and be like, oh, my fire's going down. So I had spent time before it got dark gathering the wood I needed for the night. And I would have it close to my shelter right there. So a lot of times I could just reach over and either slide a log further in, or if it was really getting kind of low, then I'd have small stuff I could throw on there just to get it going again and put more on. So I'd have to get up multiple times in the night to stoke the fire. And then there would be times where you would just wake up and you just couldn't sleep because you know, but I was pretty tired too. I was run down nutritionally. I was busy during the day. My body was trying to stay warm. I was very active. So I slept pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like, you know, I slept pretty good. I probably slept 8 hours.
Oh, wow. That's pretty dang good. Did you have any way of keeping time out there? Did you have a watch or anything that kept time for you?
No, just the moon.
Oh my
I knew
gosh.
where the moon was. I got real comfortable with knowing where the moon was. I remember the first night I was there, or not the first night, I guess it would have been the third night I was there when we had our fire finally. And Zane and I were the only ones there that night. And we were so thankful for that fire and we did not want it to go out. So we took turns, we took shifts sleeping. And I told him, I was like, you sleep first and I'll stay up and I'm just going to watch the moon. And when it gets to a certain point, I'll wake you up. And I watched the moon and it got to that point and I was like, I don't feel like it's been long enough. So I just watched, I remember just watching it and I'd see a branch and I'm like, well, when it gets to that branch, I'll wake him up. And then I'm like, well, when it gets to that branch, I'll wake him up. And I don't know how long I was up, but quite a while before finally I'm like, okay, I'm getting real tired. I'm gonna wake him up.
That's amazing. See, that's something that no one's ever, like, who goes outside and looks at the moon? You know, like no one really goes out and just watches the moon and tracks time that way. And what a cool freaking experience to be able to go and do that. I mean, that puts you one with nature. I know people talk about one with nature, but like that's legitimate.
It's a feeling, and you know it when you hit it, because it happens to me every time I go hunting. So I go out there and I start my hunt, and I've said this so many times. And when you first get out there, you feel like an imposter on the landscape.
Yep.
And there comes a moment where it shifts and you're a part of it. And that moment to me is precious every time it happens. I'm just like, finally, yes, I'm back. Like, I'm here. And you're just a part of it. And you're no longer some outside element that's intruding on it. And it's a really cool place to be.
Are you at the point where you crave that feeling of becoming one with the earth?
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. I've heard people talk about, I am not at that point. Like I know exactly what you're talking about, where you're just part of it, and you're not thinking about all the other stuff that we normally think about. But I'm not to the point where I'm like, I've gotta have it. So I'm guessing you probably seek that out every time you go hunting.
I do. I watch for it when I get out there. I pay attention to when it happens, because that's when I feel the most alive.
Yeah.
It's when you realize what you've been focusing on that doesn't matter. And it's, in the busyness of life and when everything's going on, you can't distinguish sometimes what things you need to let go of. But when you hit that moment in the woods, it is clear as a bell what you need to let go of, because none of the stuff that's piddly matters anymore. And you recognize like your place in the world and the things that are the most important. And that's when you can tell.
Yeah. Again, going back to kind of what we were talking about earlier, like I feel like everybody needs to have that. And I feel bad for the people that haven't been able to feel that feeling. Is your husband the same way as you? Does he love to be out there in the woods and whatnot?
So he's out there a lot, but no, he's not that way. His focus, he's very like, what's the word? He's task oriented and he's goal driven. So, for him, when he goes out, there is a goal, and the experience along the way is not the priority. The goal is the priority. And so that's why a lot of times, like, we don't hunt together a lot. We hunt together when there is like, okay, we don't have an elk yet. We need an elk in the freezer for winter. So we'll go together, and it's very task oriented, and that's what we're doing. But my approach to it is, and he doesn't understand it because we're very different mindsets. But my approach is like, I am out here for the experience.
Mm-hmm.
If I get something, that's icing on the cake, but I want the full experience and I want to immerse myself in it. And for him, that's a waste of time.
But I completely understand that, because my wife's the same way as your husband. You're like, when I'm hunting, it's all about like, dude, well, did you get the animal? Because like, is that meat in the freezer? Like that's really what she cares about. Where I'm like, well, no, like I don't want to do that until the last day of the hunt. How else can I, experience all that I'm going to experience up until that point? If you do it on the first day, then it's not, you don't get the fun part of it. So I totally understand where you're coming from with that, where he is. And my wife is the exact same way, but that's good.
Very different. And he's a very social guy. Like he loves to go with his friends, and the camaraderie of it too is really important for him. And spending that time with other people and helping them get their animal and those types of things are priorities for him. And so that's one thing that kind of opened my mind that I was so naive of early on in my life, is how differently people experience life and the way that their minds work and the way that they think. And they all are valuable and they all bring a lot to the table and helping us understand different perspectives and ways of thinking about things. But yeah, we definitely approach that very differently.
Yeah. What about your kids? Are they into hunting as well?
Yeah, they are. My daughters have hunted a fair amount. They are both in their later teen years now.
Okay.
And it's not as a big of a priority for them, but they really like antelope hunting. That's one thing that they always want to do every year. We make it so much fun. We do a mother-daughter antelope hunt, and they like that. My son is 10, and he had his first deer hunting experience this year and got his first deer. And so that kind of hooked him. And now he's been pheasant hunting, and he wants to go out and hunt coyotes, and he's very excited about it too.
Nice. So I've got 4 kiddos as well. My oldest is 14. So I got 14, 10, 7, and 4. So really my oldest is the only one that's really gotten into it, because here in Utah, you can't start hunting until you're 12. So like my 10-year-old, like he's gone out, we shot shotguns and those kind of things. And he loves that, but he hasn't got a chance to go hunting yet. But my 14-year-old, like he's in it. And I've always loved hunting. It's been a big part of my life. I didn't realize how fun it would be to get my kids involved into it. So now I'm getting them involved in it, and it's kind of taking hunting to another level. And I'm curious from your standpoint, because you're definitely different. I mean, you're, like you said, you're more of the alone hunter. You kind of do your thing, but I'm curious, as you brought your kids into it, are you finding that more fun, or are you still like, I want to go by myself and I want to do my thing?
I love going with them because it's a whole different experience.
It is.
It's nerve-wracking because like you want to help set them up for success. You don't want to mess something up for them and make the experience difficult for them in some way. And when they have success, I feel like I'm more excited for them than they are.
Yeah.
Just because you're so proud of them, because there's so much to manage. Like these kids that go hunting, they are managing a large thing.
Mm-hmm.
They're managing their firearm and safety and shot placement and understanding the animal and the, ability to maneuver and all these different things, especially with the girls antelope hunting. Like it is a fast-paced thing.
Yeah.
It is not a slow thing.
Yep.
They're managing a lot. And when it all comes together and they're successful, I'm so proud of them in that moment. Just that not that they were able to necessarily take the animal, but in their ability to manage all of the things that they had to manage. And it just is something that makes me really excited, and they're excited too, but I feel like I'm more excited than they are.
I'm the exact same way. When my son shot his deer, the same thing. I was super excited, and he's just kind of cool about it, like, oh yeah, I did it. I'm proud of himself, but I'm over there just losing my mind, like how excited I am for him and patting him on the back, giving him hugs and things like that. But we talked a lot about it on this podcast, but being able to experience things that not many people get to experience. And I think it's really good for our kids to be able to experience that, because again, most people aren't connected to where their food comes from. They don't have no idea where their food comes from. And like last night, we cooked up my son's deer. He shot deer this year, and we cooked up some of the steaks from his deer. And he asked, like, is this my deer? Is this my meat that I provide? I'm like, yeah, dude, this is you. And just seeing that like sense of self-confidence that he gets from that, like, I accomplished something real. I didn't just, win a basketball game, or not that that's not important, but I didn't just do something like that. I did something that's really important, that's life sustaining. And I think that changes our kids' lives.
Well, and it's essential, boys too, as ingrained in their bodies from centuries of being a provider, being able to provide something for your family. You're contributing to your family's meal.
Yeah.
That's huge for a boy.
Yep.
And for girls too. But I think that those types of things, that connection to your food and the ability to do something difficult that then provides something of sustenance for your family, those are huge things for a kid to get to experience. It's hard to provide that for them in some other way. That's kind of a hunting based experience. And I remember when my son first was of age to be able to start hunting, and I wondered how he would do with it, because we live in an area where there's deer everywhere, and we've had some experiences. He's very comfortable with hunting. He was always excited for us when mom and dad brought something home. He'd be like, oh, we got something, he understood that. But he's also a very sensitive-hearted child. He cares about animals and he loves animals. And we had some experiences in our property with deer that were either injured or attacked by like a dog or something. And he had a very strong emotional response to that. And I remember at one point in time where he said, I don't know if I could, after one of those happened, he's like, I don't know if I can hunt deer, just because he felt so much for that animal in that moment. And I thought, I don't know if he's going to want to hunt deer, but he did want to. And when the time came and he shot that deer, he was so proud of himself. He was so happy to have brought the meat home. And it's interesting how I think it's so healthy for him to be able to have that coexistence of, I understand where my food comes from and that these animals are a resource, but also to respect and just love those animals at the same time. And that, to me, for a kid to have that level of understanding of wildlife and nature, the respect and then the appreciation at the same time for the resource, that's huge. Yep. That's a wonderful thing for kids.
I would guarantee that the majority of American adults don't understand exactly what you just talked about. Just that balance of, yes, I love animals and I appreciate animals, but they're also life sustaining, and how we live, how we continue to live and you have a 10-year-old that's learning how to do that. Like that is absolutely amazing. When, like I said, when the majority of American adults have never experienced that, will never experience that. And I feel bad for them. I'm sad that they don't ever get to, because that's life-changing, that's maturing, that builds a self-confidence in kids that they need, so that they can do things in their lives that most people don't get to do, and do hard things. I mean, maybe not as hard as you do, Lindsay. You do some pretty hard things, but hard things for most Americans. It just helps them push through a lot of things, which I think is a great life lesson. Hey, I want to shift gears just a little bit and talk to you a little bit about 360 Sportsman. So I had Taylor on with me on the podcast. In fact, his podcast with you and I talking this week will actually come out tomorrow. But for those that are listening to this podcast with you and I is not going to come out until the end of the month, so it would have come out a couple of weeks ago. But I had a chance to talk to him, and we were just kind of chatting a little bit, and he brought your name up. I'm like, well, hey, she's written some articles for Ehuntr, and he's like, yeah, she's leading one of our, some of our classes. And I said, well, she could probably teach every single one of your classes.
I don't know about that. That's one of the things that I talked to him about was, there's always this imposter syndrome where you know a lot about something, but there's always somebody that knows more than you. Mm-hmm. And, you can have this mindset of like, well, why am I teaching this when this person knows way more? Why aren't they teaching that? But it comes down to like, there's people that are confident in their ability to teach something, and they understand the concepts, they've put them into practice, and they've done well with them. And that is a great person to instruct and to be a teacher. But I am the first person to say like, hey, this isn't my area of expertise, and I know people who can teach this better than I can, and I would refer you to them. I really try to stay in my wheelhouse of what I am super confident in, not only actually hands-on doing, but then also my ability to teach it.
Yeah. Well, and that's what we were talking about, him and I, is like he really wants instructors that they know their craft. And that way, when people come to it, they're like, okay, I'm getting the best of the best. And we talked about like, people can go to YouTube, and you can pull up survivalist stuff on YouTube, and it'll teach you how to start a fire with a bow, or it'll teach you how to do different things that you probably don't normally know how to do. But there's a difference between that YouTube level and actually a masterclass level of being able to learn these things. And so, to your point, having instructors that absolutely know what they are talking about and have done it. There's that factor of, well, here's Taryn, who we've never seen him build a fire with nothing. But there's Lindsay that has done that. And so, that credibility, that experience, that knowledge, it's there in a masterclass that it may not be there in a YouTube video. And so tell us a little bit about, what you're going to be doing for him, what those courses are going to look like, and what people can look forward to.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. I was unaware that this was being built until Taylor reached out to me. And I looked at it and I thought, this is really smart. This is a great idea, because you can look at like individual YouTube videos for certain topics, like you're saying, but to have something where it takes all the fundamental basic pieces of survival and puts it into one place, and you can look at it all at once and learn it in a structured way, that's super helpful. And the way that he's designing it, where he's bringing in people that not only know these fields very well, but they've also taught them. And there's a difference between knowing something and then knowing how to teach it. And that skill is essential for these types of courses to be something that somebody can really learn well from. Having the ability to teach it, it takes it to another level. So when he reached out to me, I had started years ago building an online survival course, because I really wanted to tie the two things together, the mindset part of it and the survival skills, because I don't think that they can function independently. I think they are essential together. But I'm a very busy person, and it was like a side thing I was working on, and I just couldn't get it done. And so when he reached out to me, I thought, oh, this is the perfect way to get this done. All I have to do is teach it, and then it's going to be finished. And I don't have to do all this other stuff. And so we started talking and I thought this is going to be really cool. It'll finally be able to be released to people. I've had a wait list of people that wanted it for years. And I'm like, finally be able to get this course. And that seems like the perfect thing. And so we were talking about that course, and then we talked about other things that I would be willing to teach. And a very basic wilderness first aid course is something that I'd like to teach. I teach that at our women's retreats currently, so it's something I'm very comfortable teaching. And then a hunt prep course, because I was a coach for Tana Grenda for years, teaching anybody the basics of lifestyle, nutrition, and fitness. But a lot of our coaching focused on hunters who are prepping for a hunt, and how to get yourself ready for a sheep hunt, how to get yourself ready for packing out an Alaska moose, like all those specific things. And I've done it for years. So I feel very confident teaching a hunt prep course and talking about nutrition and fitness and lifestyle to help support you in those goals as you're prepping for that hunt. So those are the 3 courses that I'm looking to produce with him in the next year.
And when will those courses be live on their website, has he said?
The wilderness survival and the hunt prep don't have a date yet.
Okay.
The wilderness survival should be releasing February 1st.
Okay. Yeah, well, him and I kind of chatted a little bit about that, and he's like, I don't have the apps, the solid dates yet, but again, that was a little bit ago. So, and I think those are ones for my listeners anyways, are probably going to be the first ones that they go to. I know there's going to be a couple archery ones. I talked to him about maybe doing some predator hunting ones as well. And, but I think for my listeners, I think that hunt prep, wilderness survival, because I feel like as hunters, and we kind of chatted about this in the beginning, but hunting's kind of changed. It's gone from, we're going to ride in the truck and drink beer and shoot things, to we're going to work our butts off in the backcountry and we're going to have fun doing it. It's going to be hard. More people are wanting to do that, and people just don't know how to do that at this point. So I think if you can find a class like your classes on 360 Sportsman, where they can go get that and get that information and feel prepared to do that. And, Taylor and I ran through a couple of the courses that are already on there, ready to go. And I love the process, and I'd love to know your thoughts on this. So the process of the ones we looked at, it's really step by step. It starts you at point A and ends you at point Z. Basically, this, here's the beginning, and this is going to prepare you for the next part, for the next part, the next part. I'm guessing that's how yours are probably set up as well.
Yeah, and especially they will all be set up that way. But with prepping for the wilderness survival side and the wilderness first aid, one of the huge aspects of both of those courses is going to be prevention, because there is so many pieces that you can put in place to prevent yourself from ever ending up in that situation.
Yeah.
There's always that odd thing that can happen that you need to be prepared for, and we will discuss that and how to be prepared for those things. But if you take the steps that are very logical steps to set yourself up for success and prevent these things from happening, you should never have to end up in that situation. If you end up in that situation having known these steps, it's because you failed to execute one of them, and that's why you're there.
That's such a good point.
So if you do these things, you do them appropriately, it will take out a lot of the risk and inherently give you a lot more confidence going out there, because you're going to know how to handle the situations, and that you have this stuff set up to prevent you from ending up in a really bad situation. And I think that with the women that I've taught these courses to in person, that's like the thing that they take away from it is, wow, I feel like I can actually go out now, even by myself, and I feel confident.
Yeah.
Because I know that I'm set up for success, and I understand how to do that and what I need to do to make sure that if I can go out there by myself and I can handle the situation, whatever pops up. And that's the goal.
It is. It's so cool. And I feel bad for, there's a lot of people that haven't had that kind of training. And so they limit themselves, right? I mean, they don't get to go experience some of those things because they don't have that knowledge. They're not prepared. They don't have the confidence. And when you're able to take a course like this and be able to just, even if it's just the beginning of that confidence, because really, I mean, that's what this is. This is starting that confidence. This is starting that education. You're going to really get it when you're actually out there doing it, when you actually experience this. But this gives you the ability to go from that point of here's the starting point to actually being out there and being like, I can do this. And I think it's going to give people a chance to really actually live their lives. You know, they're really actually going to be able to do things that they've never been able to do, never thought that they'd be able to do. And it's going to give them the opportunity to do that. So yeah, you're teaching them, you know, wilderness survival and hunt prep and all that, but I think you're giving them a gift of life experiences that they never would have had otherwise.
Well, and that's been the most rewarding thing for me from teaching women is when I get those messages from women who are like, hey, I went out and I did this because I felt like I could, and I made these steps. This is what I did. We had a gal who, mother-daughter came to one of our Alaska retreats, and I taught the wilderness first aid course at that event. And because of the training that they received, they went and purchased a Garmin InReach, which I'm a huge advocate of. And they took it with them when they went on a hike over in Washington, and they got up into the wilderness, and the person that was with them had a medical emergency. And they were able to use their InReach. They called out. The weather was so bad that nobody could come get them. And the Navy ended up having to send a helicopter and come get them. And it saved this woman's life. And the only reason that they had that InReach was because of taking that course. And that was so validating. I was just like, this instruction and these tools and this knowledge, one, it can give them confidence to go, but it can also save lives if they're in a situation that is like that. And they have this resource. They had some medical training to help support her and keep her comfortable while they were waiting for the rescue. They had the device that they needed to get help when they needed it. If they hadn't had those two things, it could have been a very different situation.
I'm glad that you see it that way, Lindsay, because I think a lot of people are going to look at teaching and whatnot that, hey, I'm just teaching them this skill. But having that perspective, I mean, that's some real life perspective right there that, you're teaching them the skill, but the grand scheme of things, you saved a life right there, you know, and there's probably multiple situations where either you've done that, or with 360 Sportsman, you're going to be able to do that, because those courses are going to teach people to be smart in those situations, be prepared for those situations, or kind of what you said, even better, avoid those situations. And in all reality, that's going to save lives. That's going to save a lot of heartache. That's going to save a lot of bad situations. So I'm really glad that you're able to see it that way. I am curious. So you've got these 3 courses through 360 Sportsman you're doing right now. Have you and Taylor talked about doing other ones down the road?
We're open to that. And I have so many amazing contacts with people who are very skilled in this industry in different ways. And so I've been putting him in contact with people that I feel like would be excellent. I have a very close friend, Adeline Richardson, who is just the most incredible houndswoman you'd ever meet. And I reached out to her and I was like, you need to teach a course on this. And she was very interested. And so I reached out to him and he said, oh, I'd love to talk to her. And she's going to be releasing her course on February 1st as well. Nice. And I told her, I said, if anybody teaches this course, it needs to be you. Her heart for hounds is incredible and her skill is amazing. She's been doing it her whole life. And I'm like, this person would be perfect for this. I can't teach a houndsman course. I don't. No. All I know is I like to go along for the ride because it's just a blast. But she is the person for this. And I know a lot of people who could do an excellent job teaching on some of these different topics. And so I would like to help connect them with 360 Sportsman.
I love that. I think that's awesome. And honestly, so we've partnered with 360 Sportsman, and my goal is to be able to do a podcast with all of the instructors, talk about your all specific areas of expertise. She's on my list, actually. Adeline is, to talk to her, because she's an amazing houndsman. She looks like she has a lot of fun doing what she's doing. Obviously I think she is having a lot of fun, but
she loves it. Just being with her spirit in that is infectious, and you just can't help but fall in love with her dogs. And fall in love with the process, and it's hard. Some of it's hard. But we go out there and we just have so much fun. And she's going to be teaching our houndsman class for the Wild Women's Rendezvous as well. her, and then Chelsea Hansler from Ontario, who is the one that does the canoe trips.
Yeah.
She is a houndsman as well, and she's going to be coming down to help with that class too.
Oh, that's sweet. I think that's an awesome class. And again, it just gives people a perspective that they would not get otherwise, because there are a lot of people that look at that and be like, oh, that's just not ethical, or it's not the right thing to do, until you go do it. And then you're like, okay, actually, yeah, this is actually a pretty beautiful thing, which is kind of a weird thing to say, but it is.
It is. And the cool thing about Addie is I've been on quite a few runs with her and seen a lot of animals in the tree, and I've never seen one taken. Ever.
Really?
Because that is not her goal.
Yeah.
Her goal is to train her dogs and to understand the wildlife around her and to help with the conservation of the species. And they will take a select few animals here and there, but she doesn't go out and kill a bunch of animals with hounds. That's not how this works. She works her butt off and loves to see the wildlife, and that is her goal.
See, that's the fun part about it, honestly, is being able to see them in that element, experience that whole thing. There is a side of predator control that I definitely appreciate, and as a big game hunter, we have to have that predator control. And we honestly, if we don't have the houndsmen to do what they do, the landscape is different from a big game standpoint as well. So I appreciate Adeline and all the houndsmen out there and what they do, and I think that's good for people to be able to see that and be able to appreciate it, and then also just be able to appreciate what those dogs do. So I'm excited about that course. That's gonna be one I'm probably gonna have to take. But like I said, she's on my list of getting on the podcast. I'd love to chat with her about just all things houndsman, but then also definitely about the course that she's gonna have.
She's an excellent interview, and she's very knowledgeable. Yeah. So I will be looking forward to that one coming out. I love listening to her talk about what she's passionate about. And I think one thing with predators too is we are predators.
We are.
And all the other predators and us, we coexist. And I think that one thing that people don't understand about predators in areas where they don't have things like hunting seasons for those predators or houndsmen that are running predators is that there is a lack of respect for humans from predators in areas like that. You look at California and the problems they have with cougars in very inhabited spaces, and we don't have those kinds of problems in areas where cougars, bears, wolves have a respect for the other predators in their area, including us.
Right.
And I think respect from predator to predator is an important aspect on the landscape.
Absolutely. Yeah. I love that you use the word respect, because that's really what it is. And you see a lot of places that are going away from that. I was going to say not to call anybody out, but I am going to call them out. Like Colorado, I'm worried about what they're doing from a predator management standpoint, introducing wolves in there. I get that the Proposition 127 with mountain lion hunting and bobcat hunting, it failed, but they're going down that slope where it's going to make it so that there isn't that respect for predators, and the impact that that's going to have for big game and cattle and sheep and everything. People don't understand what that looks like until it happens, and then by that time it's really too late. So I think having classes like this and conversations like this, I think are absolutely huge. Just hopefully the right people are listening to the conversations.
Right. Solid.
Yeah. Well, Lindsay, I want to just say thank you for jumping on. I'm super excited about the courses that you have on 360 Sportsman. I think that's going to be hugely beneficial to a lot of individuals. I think it is going to jumpstart a lot of people to take a leap that they haven't dared take in their lives, and it will change their lives. So I'm super excited for you doing that, and appreciate you being willing to do that. Before we jump off here, though, like I said, most people that follow me know who you are and where you're at. But for those that don't, where's the best place to stay up to speed with Lindsay and all things Lindsay?
Probably mostly on Instagram. I'm on Instagram and LinkedIn and Facebook and probably other places as Hunt Fiber. So you can find me by looking up Hunt Fiber and following along there. And then the Bristol Bay retreats page is where you can find the information about the retreats.
Awesome. I will put that in the show notes. I wrote that down to remember. I will put that in the show notes, so a link to the website so that people can just go into the show notes and click that link, as well as the 360 Sportsman. I'll have that in there so that people can go straight to that and get that information. I got to ask you, where did hunt fiber come from? I'm curious about that.
I always get that question because it is odd. So I believe that hunting is in the fibers of who I am, because I believe it was passed down to me from my successful hunting ancestors. If it hadn't been for successful hunters in the past, we wouldn't be here. And so hunting is in the fiber of who I am.
Wow. What a message to send us off with. I figured that was the reason behind the name, but love to hear it straight from you. And that is, I mean, that's why we do what we do. It's why we have the passion we have, because yeah, this is stemmed from centuries of millennia of our ancestors doing what we love to do. It's built into who we are as individuals. So, well, Lindsay, thank you so much again for jumping on with me. I'll let you back to your day. I'm sure you got kiddos coming home for lunch and whatnot pretty soon. So, but yes, thank you again for jumping on the podcast with me.
Thank you so much for having me. I've really enjoyed it.
We'll have to do it again soon.
Sounds good.
All right. See ya.
Bye.